Joe Rogan faced backlash from MAGA after he expressed support for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. during an episode of his podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience. Rogan praised Kennedy for his civility and intelligence, describing him as the only candidate who made sense to him. Despite never claiming to be a part of MAGA, Joe Rogan's comments still sparked a wave of infighting within the MAGA movement, revealing the deep chaos and lack of direction that has plagued the group. The short answer to why there was so much infighting is simple. The MAGA movement has lost its way. Joe Rogan, a popular podcast host known for his common sense approach and almost apolitical stance, mentioned that he liked Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as a person and appreciated his civil and intelligent discussions. He made it clear that this was not an endorsement, saying, for the record, this isn't an endorsement. This is me saying that I like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as a person. And I really appreciate the way he discusses things with civility and intelligence. I think we could use more of that in this world. I also think Trump raising his fist and saying, fight after getting shot is one of the most American fucking things of all time. I'm not the guy to get political information from. If you want that from a comic, go to comic Dave Smith. He actually knows what he's talking about. This statement should have been simple enough, but it led to a storm within MAGA circles. The problem? Rogan, who was never a diehard Trump supporter, was now being targeted by some of the movement's loudest voices. Rogan's podcast, where common sense goes to be accused of treason by MAGA. Rob Reiner added fuel to the fire by tweeting, Joe Rogan abandons Trump. They're dropping like flies. This comment highlighted the growing concern among large MAGA accounts. Most people knew that Rogan was never a big MAGA person. He was more of a common sense guy who liked Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard. Rogan doesn't have a real driving force behind his political thoughts, but everyone understands that if Trump can't win over someone like Rogan, then something is seriously wrong. Maybe MAGA doesn't care anymore because Rogan is a white guy. He's not a Zionist Jew, Zionist Christian, black, LGBTQ, or a bald-headed fake black, only fools rap dancer, abortion supporting, and crypto scam pushing Satanist-friendly atheist. Maybe that's why MAGA is denouncing Rogan. The real concern was that if Joe Rogan, who is a big name with a wide-reaching influence, doesn't fit into the movement anymore, then something is horribly wrong. The MAGA movement, which once prided itself on being a broad and inclusive tent, was now narrowing its focus and not in a good way. Trump's advisors seem to think that starting a fire will make the house warmer. The tension escalated further with an exchange between Tim Pool and Catturd. Tim Pool tweeted, the cringest thing imaginable right now is MAGA diehards shitting on Joe Rogan. Make more enemies, burn more bridges. Catturd responded that the cringest thing imaginable right now is the podcast bros, diehard fence riders simping for Bernie bro Joe Rogan, who literally just endorsed weirdo Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and refuses to interview Trump and pretend he's somehow on our side. Speaking of burning bridges, Tim Pool fired back, saying, I think Trump is on track to lose, and this is why. Dems are a cult. We'll march in lockstep. MAGA diehards can't form alliances properly. Independents/post-libs will say, fuck that. Registered Dems outnumber GOP by almost 12 million. There's a reason they can't get a Rogan endorsement. And it's exactly this behavior. The top podcast, markedly independent, fair, and honest. And they decide to go to war with it instead of trying to ally with it. Catturd, doubling down, sarcastically said, it's my fault y'all Joe Rogan endorsed Robert F. Kennedy Jr. This back and forth only highlighted the disarray within the MAGA movement. The infighting was unnecessary and it lacked any real strategy or direction. If the MAGA strategy were a recipe, it'd be missing half the ingredients and the instructions. The MAGA movement's response to Rogan's comments was not just a knee-jerk reaction, but a sign of a deeper issue. There was no clear political strategy behind going after Joe Rogan. He didn't endorse Robert F. Kennedy Jr., but even if he had, why should it matter? The only purpose of attacking him seemed to be an attempt to strong arm and scare people into pretending to like Trump. This kind of approach is not only godless and immoral, but also ineffective on the non-NPC side. All it does is start new side wars, which do nothing to help Trump win. The movement is fragmented, and the constant bickering is only making things worse. Watching MAGA eat itself is like watching a snake try to swallow its own tail. And let's not forget the absurdity of some in MAGA getting mad that Joe Rogan won't have Trump on his podcast, as if that's some sort of right. Why would Joe need to have Trump on, especially if he didn't want him? It's almost like getting upset that your favorite restaurant doesn't serve a dish that the chef doesn't like to cook. Matt Walsh added to the conversation by pointing out the flaws in the MAGA movement's current approach. He tweeted that there are a lot of right-wing influencers on this site vying for attention. Some of them actually have tangible influence in the culture, others not so much. Here's the only thing you need to ask when you see one of these people pop up in your feed. Where are your wins? What discernible victory have you helped to achieve politically or culturally? If the answer is absolutely none at all, then that is a person who doesn't deserve your attention or amplification. The term grifter is thrown around way too much. But here it applies. A right-wing influencer who has never used their influence to bring about any kind of positive cultural change is a grifter through and through. If, however, they have put points on the board, if they have helped to achieve something culturally or politically, then that person is an asset to the cause. That's a real fighter, not someone just posturing for clicks. That's also someone who you shouldn't dogpile and try to send off into exile just because they say one thing you don't like. Exile the first group, if anyone, or at least ignore them. The problem with the MAGA movement is not just the lack of leadership, but also the absence of any clear purpose or direction. The populist right people who are attacking Bryson, Gray, Kyle Rittenhouse, and now Joe Rogan over their support of anyone other than Trump are good people. They are good people who are scared and need a leader that has a mantra and purpose. Until that happens, they are going to be like butterflies with machine guns, spraying and praying. Rogan is like that one friend who tells you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. The truth is, Trump has failed to define the movement. The 2024 campaign has no clear direction, and the movement hasn't evolved in 9 years. Steve Bannon, who once was a key figure, is locked up, and Trump never talks about it. All signs point to Trump being the problem. It's difficult because Trump is a great man, a great figure, and he changed the trajectory for global politics for the better, but his time as an effective leader is done. The attacks on Rogan are just a symptom of a much deeper issue within the MAGA movement. They know this is true but don't want to face it. The MAGA movement is looking more like a Twitter demolition derby than a political movement. Former President Donald Trump responded to Joe Rogan's praise for independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. by suggesting that UFC fans might turn against Rogan. Trump wrote on his social media platform, Truth Social, "It will be interesting to see how loudly Joe Rogan gets booed the next time he enters the UFC ring. MAGA 2024. Tim Pool had the best response when he said, Trump has bad advisors and start going to war with the moderates. Is that the plan? This approach will only lead to more infighting and further fragmentation of the movement. Rogan's podcast might as well be a Rorschach test for how people interpret sanity. This is Osiris I signing off for MidlayMAGA.com. The reaction to Joe Rogan's comments about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was just one more example of this disarray until the movement finds its political purpose. then focus on how to accomplish that. It will continue to spiral out of control.
Middle MAGA.